what was the inspiration for the band, the lyrics, and the music? Is there any local inspiration in your lyrics? So if we go with the music, I would say I've got some CDs here, some releases that were fundamental in helping us establish our sound. We'll start with this gem here, the Nailed.Dead.Risen from Impending Doom. This was my first exposure to more of a death grind sort of sound. It was just monstrous when I first heard it. I was familiar with Christian death metal, Living Sacrifice, Mortification, Crimson Thorn, etc. But I think this had so much like grind influence in it with the blasting drums, super down-tuned guitars, and guttural vocals all the way through. Definitely like my first taste of extreme, brutal, heavy music done in this way. And this was definitely a fundamental album. Of course, I didn't start the band until a few years later, but I think that was definitely on my radar when I started the band as a primary influence. Now, the band that made me want to start the project and was definitely an influence on the early sound, at least on the first EP, Human Mastication, Grotesque Mastication of Putrid Innards. I was online just kind of going through severedrecords.com and just finding some interesting brutal death metal to get into in the formative years of the band. Grabbing music that I clicked with, and that was one of the early releases. There's just something about the tin can drums, lo-fi production, and a vocal style that I was just really vibing with. So I took a lot of elements from that release and tried to work them into the sound I was working with for the first EP in the band. And Moth and Rust in the Temple of Putridity is kind of a result of that. Some other releases too that were on my radar: Mortician's Hacked Up for Barbeque. This was cool, you know, like especially when I added my brother into the fold, so we kind of ran the project together after that first EP, and just, you know, two guys doing their own thing, drum machine, slamming down-tuned guitars, some of the lowest vocals ever over movie clips. Just a really fun release, and I just love how primitive that was, and it was definitely inspirational to listen to something that was using a drum machine and something that sounded that raw, you know, because we didn't have any kind of fancy production tools or software or anything like that, especially in the early days. I think that just kind of fed into our inspiration a little bit to say, this is an established band, it sounds sick, and they're able to make it sound sick with what they have, so let's try to make our stuff sound sick with what we have. So yeah, definitely a good release. Some others too, Living Sacrifice, Nonexistent. This is a gem in 90s death metal for me personally. Putting this in my CD player for the first time and hearing DJ's vocals on this was just, I'll never forget it. I've never heard death metal vocals like that on a release before at the time, and everything about it was different. I love the riffs, I love the production of the album, so that was definitely on the radar too prior to forming the band. And probably one of the biggest influences here would be Mortification's Scrolls of the Megilloth. Getting into Christian metal, this was probably one of the first early deep dives into like Christian extreme metal, and it's a solid release. Like everything on it is amazing. The production is awesome, fantastic drumming, great song structure. Love Steve Rowe's vocals. Just a solid album. That was definitely an influence. And another influence, Severe Torture, Misanthropic Carnage. Extremely Brutal. This was my first Severe Torture release. And then Feasting on Blood. And both of those, the first and second album, are just blistering, brutal death metal. Just blasting, ferocious, in line kind of with that early era Cannibal Corpse sound. And, you know, we were jamming Cannibal Corpse too in the early days. But, you know, this one was definitely an influence on me. And a couple more. Also, another one of those Severed Records releases that I had got into was Inhabit, Pray for Nothing. This was really cool too, because kind of like that Mortician vibe, you know, the drum machine, the more primitive production, all that stuff just kind of encouraged me to keep going with this band in the beginning. I just developed a taste for more brutal, raw, primitive sounding music that was using drum machines. And yeah, Sean Stiles was the guy behind this project here. Killer stuff. And to finish this off, I'd have to go with Crimson Thorn's Unearthed. So, like I said, getting into Christian death metal, this is more on the brutal side. Still death metal, but it has that brutal death metal vibe because of the vocals. They're just more guttural than what Mortification and Living Sacrifice were doing at the time. And had the opportunity to meet those guys and tour with those guys. So just a lot of rich history with Crimson Thorn in my life. I actually got to do the artwork for the re-release of this album, which was definitely an honor to do, to kind of bring some light back to this album. Fantastic album. Seriously, one of the best in Christian death metal.